Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and welcome back to another really, really hot Monday. Joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. I think, a very safe for work joke today.
Mm-hmm.
A lawyer told a judge, "My client is trapped inside a penny." The judge said, "What?" The lawyer said, "He's innocent."
Oh, I heard it at the end.
Like, I could hear the gears grinding while you were actually trying to figure this one out.
I got it. Some might say it makes sense.
We're so lame.
Yes, we are. Do the pun slap, Cheryl?
Oh, that was so funny.
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for that.
One day, I am actually going to run out of breath before saying that. So, Voyse.
Yes.
It looks like we have a new shout out to make.
We do. Welcome to the Tea Club, Colin Johnson.
Welcome in. Love and appreciate you.
Oh, Damas. You know, for my birthday, I got quite a few teas.
Yes, you did.
And I decided that I would go ahead and whip one of them up for you.
A bunch of friends and family gave Voyse a lot of tea things. They know she loves it. And I know she got a really cool tea kettle, electric tea kettle.
Yes. It's absolutely amazing. I love it so much.
Boxes and boxes of tea stuff.
So I decided to brew you up a pomegranate white tea.
Okay.
And you have to let me know what you think.
Smooth. That's a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your smooth brew, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. And hopefully you're able to enjoy your tea because some of these actually involve divorce. For our first story, am I the a-hole for telling my wife I won't be as stressed out next year because I won't be married to her? I've, 32 male, been married to my wife, Jen, 32 female, for a little over 7 years now. Up until about 2 years ago, things were great. However, a disastrous move, a few family emergencies, and a totaled car have left us in a terrible financial situation. All our savings are pretty much gone. 401k's empty, and we're hemorrhaging money. Before we bought our house 2 years ago, things were amazing financially. We made the mistake of buying a nice 3-bedroom house because we planned on having kids. Those plans, thankfully, got put on the back burner because adding a kid into this mess right now would kill us. It's not really a mystery why things are like this. Jen and I are both underpaid at our jobs, and we moved into a high cost of living area like morons. Last December, I told Jen one of 2 things needed to happen. We either sell the house or start making more money. The latter would most definitely mean finding new jobs that would pay us a market rate. Jen pushed back on this because she loved the house and her current job. I told her she had to choose one and couldn't have it both ways, and after a week of arguing, she agreed we would look for new jobs. It's been almost 6 months now. Last Friday, I signed on an offer for a new job. It's over a $35,000 raise for me. Jen, however, has done nothing. In January, she asked for a raise in the market rate and was very disrespectfully told by her manager that she was not worth that. She was shown the door to leave if she wasn't happy. Jen has taken this as her putting in the effort and done nothing else, telling me we should wait and see what happens with my job search. I'm not happy about this. When I came home Friday and told her I got the job, she got pissy because I clarified this does not mean she can stay at her job. We fought again, and I told her that this would mean we only stop hemorrhaging money on the house. We will be able to save only a little and would still not be close to refilling our 401ks. Kids, the whole reason we got this house would be entirely off the table. We haven't talked since then. Yesterday, her parents visited for dinner. Despite my best efforts to keep them out of it, Jen announced my new job to her parents by saying maybe I'll stop complaining about money once I start. I don't know why I said it, but I replied with, "Oh, don't worry, Jen. I won't have to worry about money a year from now because we'll be divorced by then." Things got quiet real quick after, and I excused myself. Her parents left shortly after, and she slept on the couch to avoid talking to me. I've not talked to Jen or her parents since last night. Things are very cold between us now, and I genuinely wonder if I did something last night that probably ruined my marriage. Am I the a-hole?
Well, you did not fail to deliver on the first story of Monday.
We got quite a few divorce stories coming up.
So this OP is dealing with what a lot of people are dealing with right now. Financial issues can start creating rifts, especially when you don't have a strong foundation. And it sounds like our couple at 7 years in, I believe, both are 32. They bought a home because they were planning on going on to the next step of their lives together, which would be to have kids. Now, they say that they bought a home currently out of their budget. I don't know why you would have gone ahead and done that. Why wasn't that put into account?
I guess it just depends. I know as the values of certain neighborhoods go up with appraisals, so do your taxes. And the moment that that happens, it could start putting a financial strain, especially considering that I'm assuming at one point our OP, thinking that they had like a savings coverage, thought everything would be fine because they had that savings.
I mean, I guess that's true. And you're also talking about what the mortgage looks like. I understand there's a lot in there. And I guess I didn't take into account the fact that he also says they had a car accident and life happened. There was a lot.
Emergencies and everything pulled at them so hard they don't have a savings or a 401k now.
And unfortunately, sometimes that's how life throws its punches at you. Everything all at once, just to see what you can withstand and persevere through.
That's very true.
I don't know if he's at the end of the rope for the relationship. I just think he was frustrated in the moment about what's been going on between him and his wife, and him perceiving that his wife isn't trying as much as he is. Because that's all I'm hearing from him is how frustrated he is. He said that though, once they've come to the conclusion that they both need to find better paying jobs to support the future they're trying to build together, that they agreed on this. I guess 6 months passes and it isn't as easy as just saying, I'm going to get a new job and find a new job, especially when you are looking to make more. He ends up finding one. $35,000 of a pay bump? That's huge. Congrats on that. But he says on the same foot that his wife hasn't really been doing anything outside of asking for a pay raise at work.
And they were so disrespectful that they say, you're not worth that. You can just go out the door.
That's a pretty toxic work environment. I can't tell if that's a made up story or not, because I haven't heard of... Now, I've heard of people being told no, but I've not heard it where they've been told no and then said, look, you can deal with this or get out. I've not heard of that situation, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. So I wonder if we're dealing with someone who's not telling the truth. That might just be a story because she does like her job. And I understand that when people find their place of work and everything gels and it's a non-toxic work environment, people can put up with being paid less to not deal with that amount of stress.
That's true.
And I don't blame people for making those type of choices in their life. You have to find the balance. And it sounds like she's found it there. But there would have been a better way of going about it other than lying. I don't know if she is, and I'm not accusing her of it. I'm just saying that's a weird situation to have panned out that way. And if they are treating you like that, you shouldn't be wanting to work at that type of place anyway. So if you really were happy with the workplace situation, would you be happy anymore if someone told you that, by the way, you're not worth us talking about you being compensated fairly? In fact, hit the bricks.
That perspective is very accurate. You're very correct. If I love working someplace so much, but then they turned around and they spoke to me like that, I wouldn't want to work there anymore.
So that's why I call that part in
shenanigans.
Yeah. We'll never know. But it's just that one raises my eyebrow just a little bit. But we'll get back to the main part of the story. He gets the job. And now, after hearing what his wife says, he feels like she's not pulling her end of the deal that they agreed on. Fair enough. I'm not heard where she's compromised and started putting out applications for other places. All I heard was she asked for a pay raise at her current work. After 6 months, you'd think that there'd be at least some form of paper trail. That's normally what happens when you apply to places. And he says it. He doesn't really want to let the family know about any of their finances or his new job or anything like that.
Probably just wants to stay away from potential arguments.
And that's understandable. You're allowed to keep your business. I guess the wife lets it out of the bag that he got a new job. And I'm certain that they talked about the financials of that.
I think, though, the one thing that triggered him was her comment saying that he'll finally stop complaining about money once he starts.
Which is a crazy rude comment to make, especially when you're in front of family. If him speaking about the financial woes all the time is getting at you, you need to speak about that. So she brings on this fight because that's a catalyst, and he fires back. I can't blame somebody for being human. In that moment, it probably didn't feel good to have someone say, you always complain, because that's essentially what this got chalked down to. Would that feel good to have a partner tell you that in front of their parents?
Definitely not.
Now, what he said back, there's no defending it, and I'm not trying to. Please don't misunderstand me.
But he definitely did ante up.
Oh, yeah. That probably would have been a very awkward situation to have sat through. So I think everybody sucks a little bit here. And I only say a little bit because it sounds like this family's had everything thrown at them the way normally life likes to try to do things. It's stressful. They're both handling it the wrong way. The wife isn't seeing that he's desperately trying to get her to find a better job so they can move forward in the life that they're trying to build together. Fair enough. She's unwilling to do that, it sounds. Or at least is not trying to put forth the same effort. And when you have a partner doing that and you can see it and feel it, it debilitates the relationship. But for him to say the things he did in the moment, you're an a-hole. So everyone sucks.
So the consensus on Reddit, there was no real consensus, so to speak. The feeling was from Redditors that you're the a-hole OP for saying something that apparently now you're regretting, but you can't take it back. There were a lot of Redditors that came forward saying that this is probably the beginning of the end for any marriage when you start talking about divorce, especially when it comes to this type of proclamation in front of family like that.
Don't use the D word if you're not ready to go through with it.
I actually find it funny that you say that because there was one Redditor, and let me go ahead and read their comment because, God, it's just so true. They said, you know how firearms experts tell people don't put your finger on the trigger unless you intend to fire? Yeah, don't say the D word unless you're prepared to get D'd real hard.
It can be devastating in a relationship when you have one partner using that as a
threat.
Yes, weaponizing your marriage is never healthy.
There's actually a lot of Redditors that came forward with their experiences on how their relationships ended. And it started with one side generally trying to weaponize saying or using the divorce word as a reason to either stronghold or insult the other side.
It can mess with the psychology of a person. If you're being threatened with something constantly, if that's what you're being met with as far as adversity and everyday things, something goes bad, you get in a small disagreement or an argument, and the first thing that pops out of your partner's mouth is the D word. If that's going to happen every single time you do something, it starts breaking you down. It's a compounding interest. And at that point, you'll turn your other partner into a robot because then they're just going to, the whole point of living would be not to make you upset. If that's how you're having to live around somebody, that type of eggshell.
You know, you saying that, let me go ahead and actually paraphrase another experience from a Redditor in this thread. They said for a long time, their partner used divorce as a means to stronghold them into hurting them so that they would stop arguing. The one comment that this Redditor said that really struck me different was, you know, I never realized the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Oh, yeah.
Well, our OP actually gave us a small update, so let me go ahead and read that now. Yeah, I messed up. People are rightfully tearing into me for wondering if this marriage didn't end when those words came from my mouth. I went to Jen last night to talk, and she refused to even say a word to me. She ended up locking herself in our bedroom and finally told me to go away. I'm scheduling some consultations with divorce attorneys today. Some people are asking about car accidents and family emergencies, mostly blaming me for them. The car was neither of our faults. An uninsured driver hit my wife's fully paid off car. Insurance gave us peanuts. The family emergencies were a handful of things that were just unluckily close to each other. I don't think you can really assign blame to these kinds of things. People will probably say I'm covering my ass or something and still blame me. Whatever. The big fuck up was the house, which I was 50% responsible for. Before I wrote this post, I probably should have admitted to myself that I spoke my feelings at dinner and got my wish.
At the end of the day, that might have been what was best for both parties. I'm sorry that this is the way this has ended, though.
I am as well. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about this situation, which is pretty dark in my opinion. Am I the a-hole for being disgusted by my wife after she asked our son if he wants to rape her?
Whoa.
10 years ago, my wife, 42 female, and I, 39 male, adopted a boy who is now 16 male. He is our only child, and he used to be such a sweet kid up until last year. This was when he first started acting out. He has a seriously disturbing infatuation with his mother, and he used to act out on it with just a lot of staring and ogling. This year was the first time he did anything beyond that. My wife has let me know that he pulls on her bra every now and then, and she now refuses to be in the same room as our son without me present as well. We have installed locks on our bedroom doors and our closet door so that when my wife is changing, she can lock herself in the closet. I keep an eye out on our son constantly, and it's been a while since he has acted out physically on my wife. 1 week ago, my wife and I sat down with our son, and we started talking about his troubling, problematic behavior around her. During this moment, my wife started crying, and she pulled her shirt up to wipe her tears away. We saw our son staring at my wife's body during this time, and it freaked her out enough that she started addressing him directly, asking him what the fuck all this is. She asked him upfront whether or not he wants to rape her, and she used the word rape explicitly. When she asked him this disturbing question, I shut her down. Our son was dead silent for the entire meeting. It's been a week since my wife and I talked to our son, and it's all the usual routine still. My wife needs me to be with her whenever she's with our son. We keep the bedroom door locked whenever we're there, and I've been giving my wife the silent treatment for asking our son if he wants to rape her. Actually, because of what she said, I once couldn't bring myself to protect her when she was around our son, and I just left her alone with him. Am I the a-hole?
This is a fairly sad story. We're dealing with a family that has adopted a kid.
Correct.
A long time ago. They said he got him when he was...
He would have been around 6.
Okay. So he's grown up with them. All I want to say is I hope that they all get the help they need. I've not heard where they've gone to any type of family counseling or therapy for the problems that they say are happening with their son. But it sounds like we have descended into a lot of paranoia on every side. And if you're going to the point where you're telling a child or asking a child that heinous question, then you're fearing for your safety. And if that's where you're at, you need to start making the proper changes. As to what those are, I can't really tell you outside of you needing to start with some form of counseling. Outside the home, help is important. Does he clarify? Have they been seeking those things?
Well, in the comment section, our OP said, we have an appointment booked with a professional this coming July. It's the earliest we can see anybody, but it's a good first step. Until then, what are we supposed to do?
Well, it sounds like everyone's living in isolation and almost as if you're in a prison. Every door has a lock. You have to keep an eye on your wife because you're scared of your son.
Do you think it's okay the way that he lashed out at his wife, calling her disgusting?
I don't think it's okay for anything to have gone on in this story like this. He even says, I've gotten to the point where it's okay if something does happen to her.
I once couldn't bring myself to protect her when she was around our son, and I just left her alone with him.
How heinous.
Well, let me go ahead and read another comment from our OP. They say, our son has gone through all of May so far without putting his hands on my wife. It was in March/April where things got notably bad. He actually expressed some discomfort with himself and has at one point cried and asked why on earth he has these feelings he can't help. So I hope that that voice of conscience grows louder and louder in his head. This is like a nightmare for us all.
So we are dealing with mental instability and we have a family that feels unsafe. I feel bad for everyone in the story. The way they've reacted to their son, though, and having to point blank ask him that question, you should have sought outside help before this got to where it's gotten. I'm happy that they have something scheduled for July, so that's fairly soon, but I'm certain that this didn't just crop up all of a sudden. Right? Normally there's a prelude.
He said up until last year, so at least a year.
Okay, so why have we waited a year when we started seeing troubling signs?
They're probably trying to brush it away.
They didn't, because they were putting locks on the doors and he was having to patrol his wife like they're at Alcatraz. I understand us believing that people will get better or that a situation can be helped if we put enough security around it, but that doesn't help or heal the situation. I can guarantee you've isolated your son more. That can't feel good for him. Again, we're talking about a mental health problem, but we've compounded the issues. Is that fair for him either?
It definitely isn't going to help anything.
I don't think anyone's the a-hole. I think they're in a very tough situation, and that sucks to hear it from all sides. I wish for you the help that you all sincerely need.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. They said, essentially, look, your wife feels as if her life is clearly in jeopardy in one way or the other. Physically, she feels like she's in jeopardy. And while emotionally being driven to a different point, she says something that is quite shocking. If those are worries that she actually voices, and there are signs that our OP is aware that may put his wife in jeopardy, to then start giving her the silent treatment, and then even saying that comment where he couldn't even bring himself to protect her with that person that makes her so uncomfortable, really did paint the OP in a bad light for a lot of Redditors. Now, there were Redditors that came out saying, what are you doing? How are you trying to make the situation better? Because locks on your doors and, as you said, Timstradamus, isolation isn't fixing anything. Our OP did say in another comment, I'm not just sitting around doing absolutely nothing for my wife. I mentioned in another comment that her son is going to be seeing somebody this coming July. It's the earliest we can see any professional, sadly. Until then, are we stuck like this?
My biggest piece of advice if you're in that type of situation is if your wife can't be in a room without you and feel safe, then your wife needs to go find some other type of living accommodations till July. Or till we can actually get to the bottom of exactly what this is we're dealing with.
That is what a lot of Redditors put forward, saying you should not be okay with someone being in a situation where there is a person that makes you feel as if your life is, as I said before, in jeopardy in one way or the other. It shouldn't be okay that they are to put up with it and to go ahead and put extra locks and to constantly feel as if you're living while looking over your shoulder. Now, our OP did post what they put as an important edit on their post, and they said, I misspoke when I wrote the title. After some reflection, I've realized that I'm not actually disgusted by my wife. Rather, I'm disgusted by the circumstances that have led to my wife confronting our son. Also, after the one moment where I left my son and wife out of my sight, I later reconciled with her and asked her if anything went wrong while she and our son were together. She said no, just saying all this for what it's worth.
And that's where I only said what I said before by saying everyone sounds like they need help. And I'm not sitting here trying to bash anyone in this story because it sounds like everyone's been affected by this mental health crisis that we've had in this home. No one knows how to properly handle this because they haven't sought outside help yet. I'm not saying that they having to put those precautions down is inappropriate. What I am saying is there's a better way to have handled it and not have pushed this almost 2 years into the future till your wife is breaking down in a kitchen and you're accusing your son of those things or wanting those things.
I think for me, this talk that apparently our OP really wanted to have shouldn't have happened with so many emotions, so right there on the edge of turning into hysterics. You have a child who does not think like an adult, who is trying to learn and have the means to transition from being an adolescent to a young adult. You're having these, of course, very, very real concerns. But then you have a woman, and I understand how it feels to let your emotions go into such a crazy mode where you can't control it right. And the last thing that you want to do is let your emotions speak on your behalf and say something that is quite detrimental to still a child. The last thing that anyone would want to feel is the guilt of pushing someone else over the edge in one way or the other. I can't imagine that this child who apparently has cried to the OP and said, I don't know why I'm doing or thinking or acting out like this. And then you have this mother who is trying to be a good mother, but is so concerned. And then you have our OP, who's this third person that's outside of all of this happening and is like, let's have this conversation right now. It shouldn't have happened to begin with.
Nope, you are correct. It should have been facilitated by people outside of the home who are professionals in the industry.
And that's the only thing that, for me, at least in this story, that's the only reason why I can say our OP's the a-hole. You pushed trying to find that solution yourself. And what you got was such a hard kickback from all the emotions that are happening here. And then your response was to try and almost teach your wife a lesson that shouldn't have happened to begin with because you weren't happy with the response that high emotions caused.
I hope that they sincerely get the help that they all need.
Well, let's walk away from this crazy story because this was an intense one. Let's go to our next story and delve us back into divorce.
What is it that they say? From the frying pan into the fire?
Yes. Am I the a-hole for threatening my wife with divorce after she quit her job to be a tradwife? I don't even know where to begin with this. Me, 34 male, and my wife, 33 female, have 2 kids together. 11 male and 9 female. Me and my wife have been together for 12 years and married for 8. Around a year ago, I noticed my wife increasingly sending me these tradwife or traditional housewife TikToks. I have nothing against that type of relationship, but I don't think it makes sense for our current family situation. I do earn quite a bit more than my wife and enough to sustain our family on my own, but I don't see the need to do so. I work 80% and my wife 50%, and besides Wednesdays, where the both of us are working, either one of us is always home for the kids. I could work 100% and let my wife be a stay-at-home mom, but again, both of my kids are attending school, and in my mind, there is no need for my wife to be at home 24/7. She got increasingly pushy about it over the past 2 months, and again, I just kept on telling her that there wasn't any need for that, and if we did decide to go down that route, what would she do during the hours my kids attended school? I know damn well our house doesn't need to be cleaned for 6 hours a day. She would constantly try to butter me up with, "You would have dinner ready every day when coming home from work," and something about unlimited blowjobs or some BS like that. Again, in the nicest way possible, I would remind her that our kids weren't toddlers and our current work-life schedule allowed us to function perfectly fine. We got into a pretty heated argument 2 weeks ago about it, and my wife completely stopped having sex with me to show me what I would be missing out on. She's basically been treating me like a roommate since. I just thought she would get over it, and this was just a phase, but God was I wrong. I came home from work yesterday and saw a bunch of presents on the dining table. At first, I thought they were all for me since my birthday was in a week, but I then saw the labels on them addressed to my wife. I read one of the letters attached to one of the presents. The last sentence on it was literally, "It was so a pleasure working alongside you, and I wish you all the best moving forwards." I thought this was some sick prank. A few minutes later, my wife just casually strolled into the living room, acting like nothing was wrong. I guess she saw my mad expression and had the audacity to tell me that, "You'll get over it." I just lost it. I just left without saying another word and went to my parents' house. I feel absolutely disrespected. Why the fuck would my wife think it was okay to just quit her job without telling me and just expect me to be fine with it? My wife has been bombarding me with texts and calls demanding to know where I am and that the kids miss me. I just told her to go find a lawyer and that I was done with her and then proceeded to block her. My son just sent me a voicemail crying and asking why I was divorcing mom and if I was leaving the family, and I guess that kind of broke my heart. I haven't responded and honestly don't know what to say to him. My mother-in-law has also been demanding that I return home and apologize to my wife. My parents also seem to be siding with my wife since they are traditional Muslims. My mom also used to be a stay-at-home mom. I feel like I'm wrong for immediately jumping to divorce without hearing her out. And besides this whole job drama, love my wife too much for this to be the end of our otherwise perfect marriage. But on the other hand, I feel like I've lost complete trust in her. Should I just swallow my pride and let my wife stay at home from now on? Or should I follow through on divorcing her? How should I navigate this situation? Am I the a-hole here?
What another amazing find of a story you have. So he's asking if he's wrong for the reaction.
Correct.
I think when anyone in a relationship feels like they've been betrayed in this type of manner, because we're not talking about a small thing, we're talking about a life change. They're both working. He says they're in a place where he's working 80, she's working 50. She has expressed her interest in becoming a tradwife. Exactly. Explain that to me.
A traditional housewife.
Okay.
Where the husband goes into work and she stays at home and takes care of the home.
Got you. I will say this. She has expressed wanting to do this, and they've had conversations back and forth for a couple weeks. Obviously, they weren't able to reach a conclusion on it, but his wife after that, I guess shortly after, decides to quit her job. He shows back up at home and there's a stack of presents.
He thinks it's for
It's for him. It's on my birthday, baby. Is this how
right around the corner.
Is this how you're saying sorry? And then he looks at the names and goes, "Oh no," and then reads one of the letters. I can't imagine that state of shock. I understand someone getting fired and finding out your partner got laid off. But when someone quits and doesn't have the respect for you as their partner to let you know that that's what they've done, that speaks to the relationship's instability wildly, in my opinion. This is probably not the only thing, because this one's a big one. You don't start at the top. You work your way up.
Well, it sounded like she was trying to work her way with TikToks and whatever postings.
And see, that's fun. You guys can talk about how you like life to be, but when you're in a spot like this, because he clarifies everything in their life very clearly. Their kids aren't young enough anymore that someone has to be at the home 24/7. But on their work rotations, someone's always with them when they're not in school.
Which is great.
If you could ideally make it, that's how for a lot of people they would live. He is correct. Why would she need to stay 6 hours cleaning in the home? I also don't believe that's mentally healthy for people. I think keeping your mind stimulated and doing things is important. I'm not sure what her angle is outside of maybe she just doesn't want to work anymore. And that might be because for a lot of people, that's ideal. If you didn't have to, you wouldn't. For some people anyway.
I can't imagine being lazy at home all the time like that.
And that's where you have to question sometimes the motivation on it. I understand when you have very young children, that be a motivator, because sometimes in some places it can cost more to have childcare than it is to have one of the parents work.
And then many times a lot of stay-at-home parents find other hobbies while they take care of children.
Sure, and you can actually, in this day and age, work from home. There's so many options now. But to strictly say I'm going to be a stay-at-home tradwife, I also don't like the whole thing where he's explaining how she's like, you're going to have dinner on the table every single night and unlimited BJs. Does that bring
skeezy
anyone in? Like, I hope that's not how she said it when she was trying to sell this whole thing.
I can actually imagine it.
That one wouldn't win me over. That doesn't sound fun. It sounds like someone's being
disingenuous.
Like, there's only so much someone will deal with. And having that play in the background where
the only reason why my partner cares enough to cook for me or be intimate with me is just because they get to be at home.
Is that almost signing up for a job, saying it that way? Because this is what I believe full-heartedly as far as values in a home. It should all be split 50-50. It should never be one person's job to have to do everything all the time. But when you're telling someone like that this is what you're going to do for the remainder of your kids' rearing, it doesn't sound healthy in my mind. Now, if it's what you want to do and you're happy with it, I'm not going to sit there and bash people for that.
But it has to be both sides understand this and agree to it.
100%. If that's a lifestyle you want to live, then I'm totally down for you having that lifestyle, as long as, yes, everyone agrees. But not everyone agrees in this situation. They've had a conversation. She knows how her husband feels. That's where 100% of this problem happening right now is on his wife. You can't come home and see that your partner quit the job that you guys already had a conversation about her not quitting. Now, do you own her? Does she have to follow your rules? No, but in a partnership, you guys both need to agree when you make big life movements.
And if one side doesn't want to adhere to not doing this crazy life change, then the other can decide to leave. They shouldn't be guilted into staying. And
that's what's happening here. She's allowed to go be a trad wife with someone who wants those things. I think that's more healthy than him eating it. I would call into question other things in your lives together that has been acceptable, that you've said, you know what? We didn't need to meet in the middle on this. Because she said it, we had a conversation and we did what she wanted to do. If you're living in that type of context, it's not a healthy relationship.
Because if you flip those roles,
it's no different.
Okay.
Yep. We would say the same thing if a man was being that controlling or doing what he wanted to do. So in my opinion, OP, you are not the a-hole. Your wife has different values. At this point, it's putting you guys in different directions, and that's okay.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. In fact, there were a lot of Redditors coming out saying there's a lot of red flags here. Between one, your wife sending you signals, right? Smoke signals. Hey, I want to do this, right? When you both talked and there was no agreement that this would happen, she just went and did it anyway. And now that it's caused you to take that next step, she's starting to utilize the children against you.
I didn't even bring that up. You are correct. They knew about that instantly when he's talking about divorce.
Additionally, the fact that OP's wife would try and keep sex away from our OP as a means to try and use him is very manipulative. A lot of this hit Redditors wrong. Mind you, there's more that was into this, but those were the main points here. Now, our OP did provide us with an update, so let's go ahead and read that. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the overwhelming support I have received. I've received a ton of messages, but please be patient with me. This week has definitely been tough on me. This whole family drama has definitely taken a toll on me physically and mentally. I just want to add a few crucial details that I missed to mention in my original post. I suffer from a genetic heart condition that puts me at risk to stress-induced cardiac arrest. I used to work full-time but was forced to cut down on my work after suffering a silent heart attack. This was nearly a decade ago, and since then, I've worked my own physical and mental well-being. Some people didn't understand me constantly mentioning why it was such an issue working the extra 20%. I honestly don't know how much time I have left, and my kids are the most important things in my life. For my own mental health, it's essential that I get to spend time with my kids throughout the week. Besides my wife and kids, I have nothing. I hate my fucking job and purely continue for the sake of my kids and wife. Well, after spending a day at my parents' house, eventually, I felt enough time had passed for me to gather my thoughts on everything. What she did seemed like the absolute slap in the face, but I went back with the intention to resolve this and didn't want to escalate this fucking nightmare. My wife seemed happy I returned, but wasn't apologetic at all. The kids, especially my son, were ecstatic. That sort of made me ignore the lack of remorse for the time being. That same night, after putting my kids to bed, I told her we need to have a serious discussion. I told her how I felt about everything she did. The fact that she knows about my health condition and still went through with it. The fact that I set clear boundaries and she still chose to quit her job without my consent. How the fact that she told my son that I was going to abandon the family really felt like a stab in the back. How throughout all of this, she didn't even seem remorseful once. The fact that she chose her own happiness to the detriment of mine. The fact I sacrificed so much for the family and I got repaid like this. The fact that we now, as a family, have to make major lifestyle changes since a third of our family income vanished. For a split second, I saw an ounce of sadness in her eyes before she went right back to being annoyed with me. I then simply told her to lay out her half of the story. Here is a summary of what she said. She felt ignored by me constantly rejecting her proposal. She had worked long enough, and this was finally the time for her to enjoy her life as a true wife. She also said that I was being a baby about the whole spending extra time with the kids thing. That really pissed me off, and we ended up getting into a heated argument. I couldn't bear any of it anymore, and just ended up sleeping in the guest room. Until yesterday, nothing changed. She constantly tried to play everything off and wanted to embrace her new role by constantly trying to have sex with me and by making me my favorite dishes. It just felt like she was trying to manipulate me again. I wasn't having any of it. I just kept on sleeping in the guest room. Well, my birthday was yesterday, and after work, my wife and kids picked me up and we ate dinner together. This was probably the first time I genuinely had a smile on my face in a week. Well, that smile vanished because she tried to seduce me again later that night. I rejected her, and to my surprise, she had a full-on mental breakdown. I just held her, and she started apologizing for what she did. She claimed she didn't understand how much she hurt me. She was sorry for making me feel like an afterthought, etc. We ended up sleeping in the same bed yesterday. I felt like things were finally moving in the right direction, and I again asked her about searching for a new job today. Instead of getting mad, she just replied with, "I need to think about it." Yeah, that's where things are as of today. It feels like progress is being made, but I don't know. This is just another manipulation tactic of hers. I'll probably make a final update in a month or so. Reddit isn't doing my mental health any favors. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Could I have done something better? Is she being genuine? And to those incels who constantly bring up Islam as a way to justify her behavior, please shut the fuck up.
I would just say it might be time to either, again, get into counseling or start working towards getting out, because it doesn't sound like you're going to get what you need as well out of this relationship. I'm failing to understand where like the trade-off is unhappiness and having to work more, and the little time I do get, it's been compensated by your body. How does that factor out? Because that's not what he values. He values his time with his family. They had a conversation, a real one. that didn't lead to her trying to seduce him. And then it kind of falls back and then goes, oh, I'll think about it. I don't know if that's the progress you think it is. I think, again, we might be talking about more manipulation. And I'm sad to hear it. When you've gone to the extreme that his wife has, might be some mental instability creeping up that she needs to get some help for.
Well, I know the one thing that Redditors were saying after that update is do not add more hours to what you work when you know that you have your own mental and physical caps there.
That was another aspect of this. He's saying, look, I'm trying to balance it. It shouldn't be okay. And people should never have said, work the 100.
There is absolutely, even the most healthiest person, I do not think it's healthy to work 100% all the time. That is like asking someone to sprint every single day, 24 hours a day. Your brain and your body cannot handle that type of stress. When people try exerting themselves beyond 100%, and this is one of the things that I think for me really irk me, especially over time as I've learned a lot through my own experiences. Nobody should be fine with giving 110% of themselves into anything. It is not healthy. You are pushing your mind and your body beyond natural means, and all that you're doing is forcing yourself into a state of stress all the time, because if you cannot keep up, and nobody can keep up 110% all the time, that's not an okay state to be in. All it does is create this unhealthy mental wedge in yourself where you can have healthy boundaries and you've exceeded those into unhealthy boundaries.
I mean, I am happy that he has his values and his priorities straight on this one. I want to spend time with my kids. They only stay young for so long. The time will fly by.
Especially when he knows he's got a genetic condition. Can you imagine knowing that you've suffered silent heart attacks?
That's got to be terrifying, and it sounds like she doesn't care.
Well, our OP has given us one last update.
Oh, I was going to ask if there was.
There is. OP says, again, I'm beyond grateful for all the love and support you guys have shown me. If I'm being honest with everyone, I've been drinking a lot to get through this mess. I feel like a zombie just wandering around with no purpose. My wife's actions completely broke me. Thankfully, I've managed to cut most of it out over the past week, and that's mostly thanks to Reddit. You guys seriously helped me keep my mind busy with something besides alcohol. Being reminded that having two smaller versions of myself looking up to me and learning from the things I do really helped me snap out of it. I've been at my lowest since making my first post, and I think I've hit a new low. Until last week, nothing changed since my last post. My wife still pranced around enjoying her new lifestyle while I suffered in silence. After posting my update, I did realize that my wife 100% was trying to manipulate me into submitting to her demands. I asked her if she actually started looking for a job, and she hesitated and told me no, and she needs more time. If I'm being honest, that's all I needed to know from her. I tried making this work, but honest to God, I couldn't keep living like that. Every day that passed felt like a part of my soul vanished. My wife kept on trying to please me, but it didn't seem genuine at all. I've also started noticing her getting lazy and starting to neglect my kids. My wife stopped cooking, and after working 9 hours of hell, I was now just the one to help my son with his homework and the one to play Barbie with my daughter. I'm not complaining about spending time with my kids, but I could seriously see this becoming worse as time goes on. I don't know where the woman I once fell in love with went, but that thing that lives with me wasn't her. I know a lot of you are going to smile hearing this, but I did tell my wife that I want to divorce last week. I came home from work and I saw my wife sitting on the couch watching TV while my daughter was crying in her room. I just snapped at that moment. I told her we need to have a serious discussion after the kids go to sleep. After I put my kids to sleep, I sat down with her and told her our marriage was over and that I'll be contacting my lawyer tomorrow. Divorce was never something I ever planned on doing in my life, but I just felt like something needed to change or my kids would be visiting my gravesite in a few years. Our culture frowns upon it, and I knew I was about to get serious backlash for it, but at this point I couldn't care less. I don't know why, but she thought I was joking and started laughing. I told her I was being serious this time, and her manipulation methods weren't going to work on me anymore, and her face just went pale. She then went from screaming at me to crying and then blaming me for every issue in the family to then begging for another chance. She literally went to get her laptop and tried to apply for jobs on Indeed while begging. I just told her to cut the bullshit and told her I tried my best, but she just kept giving me empty promises. I told her the following: I know her trying to fuck me was just a manipulation tactic and not to show her devotion to me, as she puts it. If she was truly sorry, why didn't she start applying for jobs immediately instead of waiting until I confronted her? Her completely disregarding any of my feelings and needs while purely pursuing her own shows me how selfish she actually is. She knows about my health and still chose to completely fuck me over. And now this part pissed me off a lot. Her poisoning my son against me when this all started was beyond fucked up, and looking back was enough of a reason to divorce her. We ended up fighting for another hour or so, and her constant screaming ended up waking up our daughter, and that's when I told my wife to shut the fuck up and go to bed. The following day, my mom called me during work and asked if I lost my mind or something. My wife told my mom that I was going to divorce her. She claimed that I was bringing serious shame onto the family, and she didn't raise me to abandon my kids. Yep, my wife told my mom that I was planning on abandoning my kids and has been feeding my kids the same bullshit. I explained to my mom the reasons why I wanted divorce, but she won't budge. If I divorce my wife, I'm a disgrace of a man, and my mom wants nothing to do with me. I know my mom well enough to tell that her words are just empty threats, but what hurts me most are the reactions of my kids. My son won't look me in the eyes and won't even let me anywhere near his room. My daughter just tries to hit me whenever I try to talk to her. I've tried explaining to them that I'm in fact not going to give them up, and me and their mom are just going to separate, and they just seem to believe whatever BS my wife tells them. Friends and in-laws also claim that I'm a monster for making my wife go through this. My wife was served with divorce papers 2 days ago and has been crying nonstop since. My wife told my kids about the divorce papers, and they both claim that they will never talk to me again. And in my son's words, I'm a bad husband and father. I cried myself to sleep that night. I thought divorce would bring me peace, but it's only brought me one step closer to taking my life. As I stated in my previous post, I have nothing and am nothing without my kids. Growing up dead poor as a refugee in Germany, I promised myself that I would give my kids a life that I myself could have only dreamed of, but I feel like I failed. I'm sorry for making this post longer than it has to be. Again, I just want to thank everyone for the love and support, but this will probably be my last post. Wishing you all a lovely week.
Your stories have been devastating. Ugh.
I think it's heartbreaking to hear that, and I hear it quite a bit, where one parent tries to alienate the children from another. I hate when people use children as weapons against others. It is beyond disgusting in my mind.
Get a lawyer and make sure you get your time with your children. Unfortunately, it sounds like the mothers already poisoned the well, and that can take some time to work through, especially when you're talking about young children and a divorce. But just understand, there is a light at the end of that tunnel. A lot of people go through this. There are a lot of really bad parents that do this with their children during divorces. As long as you're as present as you can be and you try, I promise at the end of the day, there will be something better. Keep your head up. Keep moving forward.
Let me go ahead and read one Redditor that responded to our OP. They said, I went through something similar, and I know that the words seem hollow when I say them, but it does get better. I seriously promise you this, my friend. The words your kids are using were just fed to them by your former wife, like a movie script. There will be a day when they realize how strong and devoted to them you are. Please just keep on living life, knowing that eventually there will be happier times and more peace in your life. You are doing the best you can, and if you keep doing it, it will be enough. Take care, my friend. You deserve happiness, and we all support you.
You're here.
Well, let's go ahead and go to our next story, and I'll try and bring it up a little from here.
Can you?
I'll try. Am I the a-hole for not waking my wife up and letting her sleep the whole day? Using a throwaway for obvious reasons. Just a quick background info. My wife, Heather 36 female, and I, 35 female, have been together for the past 14 years and married for 10. We have 2 daughters, 4 and 6 years old together. Heather is a doctor and she works ridiculously long hours, gets tired, etc. Yesterday, she came back home after being away all day. She was on call and needed to go in for an emergency surgery and told me she was going to sleep for a couple hours and asked me to wake her up by dinner so she could see the girls and I a bit. She slept around 5 p.m. I tried to wake her at 7 p.m. I called her, softly shook her, gave her a kiss on the cheek, but she didn't get up. She is a very light sleeper, and these things wake her up 90% of the time. I thought she needed the rest and let her sleep. Heather slept until the next morning, which is when she needed to go to work. Heather was very upset the following morning, saying I should have woken her up and that I had caused her to miss an entire day of family time. I explained that she didn't get up, and she said I just should have tried harder to wake her. I get that she wants to be present in our family, and she is. And she wants our kids to see both their moms, but I just wanted to let her get some much needed sleep to help her be well rested for the next day. Am I genuinely the a-hole?
So, I am certain if you have someone in the medical industry, or if you are in it, you can familiarize yourself with this type of story. I mean, I guess it didn't even have to be the healthcare industry. It can be any industry that has people working more than the 8.
Yes. Long shifts, random shifts.
We have several family members that work in both those type of fields, and it's difficult when you're having any type of family interactions and you know that someone is sleep deprived, but they're trying. They want to be a part of it. It's important, and you can see their values through those decisions when you're sitting there going, you know, how many hours have you slept today?
They look at you with those dead glassy eyes, and they're like, I'm still here. I'm still here.
But I love being here and I want to be here. I can see the frustration of the wife who's a doctor, of not being woken up when she clearly wanted to be. I can understand that. ROP says, though, that she's present in their lives. Obviously, those hours can be rough depending on what's going on. But you can also get from the OP's perspective. When you're trying to wake your sleep-deprived, in this case, wife, up, she says she's not waking up to the normal stimuli. And I think if you've been in that situation for anybody and they're not waking up immediately, the first thing that comes to all of our minds is their body must be telling them that they need the sleep. I think in my mind, I don't find a-holes because what is she exactly asking? If she's a-hole for not waking her up?
Correct.
No. I think in that moment, you're trying to be a good partner. And yes, I get it. Your partner really wanted to be awake to spend time with the kids and all that. But if she's not around because you guys aren't making the proper trade-offs as far as sleep and your health, what does it matter that she got to wake up right then and play with the kids if she's not healthy and ready to handle another day of work, putting herself and her patients at risk because of sleep deprivation? Please get your sleep. It will impact every single thing in your life. And for the people who can't, I feel so terribly sorry for. Because when we've had our bouts, when we've had to deal with our health problems in the past, and it's messed up our sleep rhythms, it's devastating. The impact it can have on yourself and everyone else around you. We're not our true selves when we're not getting the proper amount of sleep.
That's very true.
I'm certain if your wife is thinking from a clear point of view, she should probably be thanking you for letting you sleep. There's been many calls where I've had to make that situation with Voyse.
Thank goodness.
If you don't wake up on a tap or a kiss on the forehead or a rubbing, then it's time to pull back and understand that that person needs sleep. So I don't find a-holes here.
The consensus on Reddit is there are no a-holes here. Many Redditors put forward ROP did try to wake their partner, and if clearly that person wasn't responding, they needed that rest. And on the other flip side, people could understand that someone was upset for missing out on quality time. Now, some Redditors were saying, you know, it sounds like our OP is a little bit of a romantic. If just like a light tapping and a little kiss, you could have tried a little harder. So why don't you actually set up some communication with your partner? Ask them how far to really push it when trying to wake you up. At least in that way, you guys are having clear communications, and it might seem like over communicating, but that's a lot better than feeling like one side isn't heard.
That's very true. You can find the middle ground on that where everyone's happy with the extent. Like if you shake me like an earthquake and I still don't wake up, okay, you can leave me alone.
Well, let's go on to our next story. And this next story is our last divorce story. I told you we're going to have a few of them. This is our last one. Okay, so there's that. There's that little lining that I just told you about. And let's see what you think about this situation. Am I the a-hole for wanting to divorce my postpartum wife? It's stupid to think I'm at this point, but here I am. My soon-to-be ex-wife, 28 female, and I, 29 male, have wanted kids for years, and we're thrilled when she finally got pregnant last year. From day one, I wanted to be the most supportive husband and future father I could. Her father was never involved in her life. I used to work as a tech in labor and delivery, and my brother, to put it kindly, is not the most involved father. I saw too many problems up close when it came to lacking husbands, and I would be damned if I made the same mistakes. The problem is roughly 4 weeks into her pregnancy, everything started going downhill. She stopped wanting sex. Fair enough. Hormones and stress make that a problem. I went full stop. But then she didn't want any physical interaction. No cuddling, no kissing, slowly becoming more and more distant. Her eating constantly changed, and she was terrible about it. She would demand I get her something all day. Then, the moment I give it to her, she wants something else, screaming at me. Okay. Hormonal issues, I get it, no problem. She never lets me go to any appointments. No groups she went to, spent more time away. Became cold and bitter, constantly angry at me. This went on for months. Slapped me a couple times when I forgot one of her dozens of tasks she assigned me during the day. Stopped doing anything for the house a month into the pregnancy. Sure, she's pregnant. I get it. Moving around is hard. But she wouldn't even do laundry about 4 weeks in, and by 5 weeks, I did everything. I'm also the primary source of income. I barely sleep. I'm running on fumes. Made me sleep in the guest room. Would always try and pick fights. I never once raised my voice, my hand, or my tone. I sat there and constantly mentally reminded myself this isn't her, and this would all be worth it. She didn't want me to make any baby decisions. No name, no work on the nursery, nothing. 1 month before she delivered, she yelled how fucking useless I am and how I don't do anything and that she's staying with her mother. She didn't let me get her anything, come check on her, threatened to divorce me and get a restraining order if I even called her. A couple weeks back, I found out about the birth of my son on a Facebook post. She posted it with her mother and some family. It fucking broke me. I tried to go to the hospital and visit. They had security kick me out. After months of outright hatred, anger, and abuse thrown at me 24/7, I fucking had it. Odds are I'm not even on the birth certificate. I opened a new account, and all of my deposits go there. I took half out of our joint account. She never bought baby stuff ahead of time. Who knows what that money was going towards? So now that she has to buy supplies for our son, she's used up every cent. I've gotten a lawyer. The house is mine. I'm the only one who spent money on it anyway. I've sent the rest of her stuff to her mother's house. I'm demanding a paternity test. I'm not spending another damn cent until I get verification it's my son. I'm absolutely divorcing her. She chose the stay-at-home life. If she cheated, she's screwed. Her mother has money for a couple weeks' stay, not even close enough for full-time support. If he is my son, I will absolutely be getting my rights as a father for a relationship. Last week, my soon-to-be ex called. She was practically hyperventilating. She wanted to come home. She was crying, how it was all a mistake. She's not staying with her mother. She's at a friend's house. She wants to come home. She wants our son to have his father. I told her I don't fucking believe he is my son. Why the fuck would she pull this shit if he is? Show me a paternity test and I'll do everything I can for him and only him. She wants to meet tomorrow at a park so I can talk to her. I said sure, so I can finally say everything I should have said months ago to her face. My parents are hoping we can make up, but they absolutely understand if I won't. My brother is a deadbeat jackass, so I don't care what he has to say. But my sister thinks I should at least hear her out. Am I the a-hole?
These have gotten more frustrating as the stories have gone on. Look, this thing has kicked off the second she got pregnant. Is
About
this treatment?
a month, I believe, after she got pregnant.
That's being a jackass from start to finish. I understand hormones and the things that change biologically for women during pregnancy. But the way you treat someone, that's something you choose to do. Everyone has bad days. It's what you do within them that makes you who you are. And it sounds like your wife, hopefully soon to be ex, has chosen to completely treat you like trash. And throughout all of it, I can understand, again, the mood swings and the ebbs and the flows of every day. The one thing that is unacceptable, unequivocally, is I heard she put her hands on you. Absolutely not. Never will there ever be an excuse for laying hands on anybody outside of self-defense. The other problem that happened here is he wasn't even notified personally, just
on Facebook,
given a text about, hey, by the way, I'm giving birth to our child right now. How devastating a way to find out one of your children are coming into the world and you had to find out through a third party. I could understand maybe a couple of these instances happening after the birth, because then, yes, then we're talking about postpartum. This is all happening well before that birth. I would wonder what else you guys have been doing or how long the relationship has been going on where she's treated you like an animal. Everything changed all of a sudden now that she's pregnant from 1 month in. I can't believe that that's true. Not like this. Not as severe as this has happened. He says that his suspicion here is the only reason why she's doing this is because she cheated on him, and that's not his child. Good for you for making sure you get a paternity test. I am always going to be an advocate for that. If you believe that you need to have one, have one.
I agree with that too.
And yes, don't budge on anything till that information is verified. I end up just feeling very sad for him because he doesn't win in any of it. What he's looking down the barrel at is either that is his child and he missed the birth of it and he was cut off from their child for however long this has been going on, a month or so.
He wasn't a part of any of it. Not picking clothes, not ultrasounds, not the birth, not the name. He was absolutely cut out of all of it.
I know the stereotype is for a dad to be lazy like his brother. They're not a part of it, but for the majority of us, being a part of those things was and is important. You want to be present. It's just as much his child as it is your child.
For anyone to say that that is not important for someone simply because of their sex, that makes that person an absolute asshole, in my opinion.
Agreed. But he's having to swim through all of that. What is it that he's asking if he's the a-hole for then?
For wanting to divorce his postpartum wife.
No, not even a little bit. This is an unhealthy relationship, and now she's sounds like, and we have another person using the children as the manipulation tactic. Yes, I want our son to have a father. That's literally what she tells this man. After all of the abandonment and issues that she has stirred up and drama she has made for him, get your divorce lawyer. Make sure you get your time with your child. And hopefully through all of this, your ex gets the help she needs. You're not the a-hole, OP.
The consensus on Reddit is the OP's not the a-hole. There were a lot of Redditors that were shocked at how far things went. Many said that throughout OP's story, there were hundreds of red flags, and any one of those could be grounds for divorce. Mental abuse, physical abuse, lack of communication, an alienation of your own child. Don't even get me started. Other Redditors actually brought up mental illness. They let OP know what they think that their spouse is going through is probably some really big psychotic break to have them acting like this. It doesn't make it right, but it could be one grounds is to try and understand. And then those same Redditors were turning around and saying, look, well, your soon-to-be ex needs mental help and we hope that she gets it. You should also look at it for it too, because you've been through quite a lot, especially considering that you put it all out there. You should go get counseling, help you work through that pain. That way it doesn't impact you in a negative way as a person. Other Redditors say if you feel comfortable going to see your soon-to-be ex, it's at least good that you're seeing her in a public place. You don't need to be putting yourself at jeopardy. Make sure that you think about your well-being first, because you didn't know her mental state before, you don't know her mental state now. Now, I will say there is another update from our OP. So let me go ahead and read it and see what you think about this whole thing. I had to speed up the process of actually talking to her since the story spread quickly around the internet, inevitably reaching someone involved with friends or family, and now way more people I personally know are getting the details than I'm comfortable with. Oh well, my bad, lol. Before I ended up chatting with her, I opened up to my parents and sister about what was happening in detail. My parents were flustered at me hiding the more unsavory details, to say the least, and are probably going to be checking up on me daily for the rest of the year to make sure I'm okay. My sister would probably have to be held back from thrashing her, so I had to get a friend to help with the chat, since my sister would not be able to contain herself. So basically, within hours of the story going into the digital stratosphere, I called my wife back as quickly as I could to finally sit down and talk. We chose a local park this morning, and I had a friend of mine record the conversation from beginning to end. I was basically ready to hear the generic affair story and get out of Dodge, but of course it got complicated. We met at a section with picnic tables and picked one as far away from other people to avoid them getting wrapped up in any awkwardness. She looked terrible, haggard, stressed, and thankfully without the baby. She tried to have the big emotional chat and whatnot. I wasn't tearing up or acting like the hardened badass. I frankly was just wanting to figure out what this was all for. I didn't even get to ask the question before the floodgates spilled. I'm going to attempt to relay the story as best as I can, because even looking back on the recording, it's a mess. But also, it's because I don't 100% believe it. So fair warning, it could all be fake. This all started with her mother. As I said before, my wife's father was absent. He started off well, having 2 sons with her mother before her. When her mother got pregnant with her, her father went from being the picture-perfect guy he was at first and slowly changed into a negligent, abusive, unfaithful, and unsupportive jackass, ending with him disappearing when her mother was delivering. He's been in and out of prison since. No one knows why he did it. The impression her mother always gave was the strong, resilient woman who withstood anything life threw at her and did anything for her kids. She has claimed to be in therapy for years. In reality, she has managed to conceal a deep hatred for men outside of her sons. But according to my wife, there was favoritism towards her. My wife also found out she stopped therapy almost a decade ago, but never told anyone. Her mother seemed to always have some slight against me, and now I know why. She was never hostile, but certainly wasn't warm to me. And hearing about her secret hatred, I kinda knew where this was going. Roughly about half a year before she got pregnant, my mother-in-law slowly began sowing seeds of doubt and bitterness into my wife. Apparently, she had a full mental break. She told her about me staying late at work, possibly hiding an affair, or that myself providing majority on the income, setting her up for a hard divorce. Everything my mother-in-law's husband did to her, she convinced my wife I would do to her, and she pumped this poison into her for months. My wife always idolized her mother, and compounding that with anxiety she suffered from for years, she dove in deep. As soon as she got pregnant, like on the dot, she fell into a mental hole within days. And that's when her mother got hold of her again. Hearing about her pregnancy apparently triggered something fierce in my mother-in-law, and it spiraled from there. She had my wife fully convinced it was happening again. Every single thing my wife did to hurt me was at the behest of my mother-in-law. Combined with pregnancy hormones and undiagnosed mental illness she claims to have, no confirmation, and stress, she completely lost her mind. She 100% believed I would bail, so she was punishing me first, culminating in her moving in with her mother and leaving me out of the birth. While I was sending the papers and started the divorce proceedings, she kicked into full-blown postpartum depression. And when her mother finally got her, when she finally beat me, which I guess was her victory over her ex, did I mention she's fucking crazy? She had no more use of my wife. The family involved in the birth included my mother-in-law's sister and my wife's brothers. While my mother-in-law and her sister knew what was going on, my brother-in-laws got fed the bullshit narrative my mother-in-law spun. When my mother-in-law was done with her plan, the entire facade came down, and my brother-in-laws found out everything upon questioning my wife. They were horrified. Needless to say, postpartum, facing a very grueling divorce on her side, no longer welcome in our home, and having done everything to alienate me from my son at the behest of a broken lunatic, really hit her like a truck. She torched her entire life because her mother is a broken shell of a human who used her to enact her own sense of justice. The very mother who washed her hands of her once she got what she wanted. Or at least this is the story she gave me. Frankly, there are too many holes in her story. The starting point of the pattern of abuse, the claims of who was involved in the delivery, me being absent from appointments, the friend, who she confirmed as female, she's staying with, and of course my alleged son's paternity. It seems way too fucking crazy to be made up. Who the hell would go to the effort to make this up facing what she's facing? As soon as she finished, she said she's setting up a paternity test and gave me the info I need. Within luck, it would be done in roughly a week or so once I do my part. She gave the most sincere apologies any human being has ever given. She's begged for another chance. I was frankly too stunned to say anything. So she left and promised to call soon. I don't think I can give her another chance. I don't think I can ever risk anything like this again. God, I'm still hoping she's just being a cheating psycho and spinning a sympathy story to try and throw me off, because this got way too complicated.
What an update that was.
There was one Redditor that said, I'm not saying that your story is fake, but if it's not, I wish it were for your sake.
We need to find the Infinity Gauntlet. I would have to side with him as far as not going forward with that relationship. You can still be a good father and a present one. I am so sorry for your ex's mental state and her mother's involvement in that. It's very sad where you can have someone's biases bleed over into your perceptions and then it change your reality very quickly. I'm very sorry it cost your marriage, but going forward, I hope she can get the help she needs and become a healthier, happier version of herself.
Well, that was a crazy story, wasn't it?
They've all been crazy. Do we have a fun one? Is it there somewhere?
Maybe not.
These have all been severe in their own ways.
Sometimes life just has to hit us hard. Well, let's go on to our next story.
Yeah.
Am I the a-hole for refusing to offer my mom a chance to do better for her kids' sake? My mom had me, 17 female, when she was 30. She was single and I never knew my father, but I did find out more info on him 2 years ago after doing some online digging and didn't like what I found. But that's neither here nor there. My mom was not a good mom. She admitted to me in the past she attempted to abort me and it failed, and she tried to give me up for adoption, but the couple who planned to adopt me got pregnant just before I was born, and so mom was like, fuck it. She covered the most basic of needs for me, and that was it. We did not spend time together. She hired a babysitter to do the day-to-day care, usually a teenager looking for money. She did not take an interest in my education. She ignored any contact from school. It was up to my babysitter to take me to medical appointments. That's just how she was. She didn't want me. When I was 9, she met a guy and she married him. I think I was 10. They had a daughter soon after, then a son, and then another daughter. I spent most of my time at friends once she got married, since my mom didn't want to pay for a babysitter anymore. Worked for me. At 10, it was painful for me to see her make a family when she hadn't wanted me. What neither of us ever expected or prepared for was the fact her kids would seek me out and want me. I try to avoid being around them where possible because I don't want to be a jerk, but I don't want a relationship with them either. But they still look at me like I'm the coolest person they know and try so hard to reach out to me. When mom realized this 4-ish months ago and realized how old I am, I think she panicked and she brought me to therapy with her where she apologized for being a bad mom, admitted she had been a bad mom, and begged me for a second chance so she could do better for the sake of her 3 kids who clearly want me to be their big sister. She said she knows we have no relationship, but she doesn't want me to leave in a few months and break her kids' hearts, and she sees how wrong she is. But I have refused to offer her that chance. I told her that she made her choice 17 years ago, and her kids' best interests are not something I am worried about. Just my own life and how I move forward once I'm gone. My mom and her husband, who I guess she told, were both pretty angry I didn't consider their kids at all, because at least she's trying now or whatever. Am I the a-hole?
I need you to clarify something for me. We are talking about a 17-year-old.
Correct.
Okay.
It sounds like they might be on the cusp of being 18.
Okay. Well, that's the whole worry here now is the mother's having regrets because now her eldest is about to be an adult and If you treat someone like a pile of garbage, they're not going to stick around, and everyone understands that. But now she's having second thoughts on this, and to the point where she's dragging her ROP to therapy. That's not a good place to be. You shouldn't be dragging anyone anywhere.
But she's not doing it for the sake of their relationship. She's doing it for her other three's relationship with her. I apologize for being a bad mom, but make it better with me because my other 3 kids need that.
OP, you're 17. It sounds like you've gotten the short end of the stick constantly throughout your very young life. I think a lot of people go through that. It's okay to take time once you become an adult to separate and figure out what it is, or who you are, and what your values are, and what your scars are. Because a lot of the time we don't think things get left behind when we get out of situations. But for several of these stories we've heard today, once you get away from them, it's time to start healing. So in my opinion, you're handling this properly. If you're not ready for that relationship or for that type of help, then that is your boundary and that is your right. Maybe someday you'd like to revisit it, but you're not in onus to anyone for when that time or day comes. Listen to yourself, be open to it when it happens, but don't force anything.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. Some Redditors were pointing out how interesting that she decides to try now, that it couldn't have been years ago.
17, maybe?
For Redditors, it came down to no one is owed a relationship, and that's the bottom line. Now, for me, I will point out our OP was very candid about how her entire relationship with her mom is, how everything functioned, from babysitters to how things were with appointments, with the school, how truly hands-off her mother truly was and really didn't care. In all of this, the one thing that I didn't hear when they went to therapy is that her mom actually loves her. Her mom admits to being a bad mom, and now she wants to try for the sake of the other 3 kids, not for their relationship, but for these other 3 kids. But never does it say that her mom says that she loves her. And I imagine if, mind you, I can also hear this as a teenager, right? My mom finally told me she loved me, but I think it's bullshit. I can imagine that kind of argument from a teenager. But this young woman is so detached from all of it. And I can feel it in her writing. She's her, yes. But she's so detached from the emotion that I don't think it actually hit her that her mother hasn't even said it, even in therapy, that she's loved by her mom. And that is honestly very heartbreaking. I think I'm left with that. How do you know what you don't have if you never had it?
When she goes forward in life, please be very selective on who you trust. Just because they're just better than what your mother was offering you your entire childhood doesn't mean they're good. Seek help. You're going to need it, especially if you want to start forming healthy boundaries and a good understanding of what life should function like.
Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about this parenting situation here. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother that he has no idea what he's talking about because he isn't a parent? I, 26 male, have 3 kids under 5, 4 female, and 2 male, with a 4th kid on its way. Before we had kids, my wife and I had lots of ideas about the parents we were going to be, and we had lots of scorn for people who parented in ways we disagreed with. But as any parent knows, actually raising kids is hard work, and you will break your values. My brother, 22 male, is doing a psychology degree with a few modules on child psychology and development. He regularly tells me that he thinks iPad kids are spoiled brats who will struggle developmentally, and they are the spawn of lazy, negligent parents. I wouldn't say my kids are iPad kids, but they do have an iPad between the 3 of them and more screen time than I would personally like, but sometimes them's the breaks. My brother also disapproves of the fact we give our kids sweets as bribes occasionally and have lied to our kids. Every time he tells me his views on parenting, I just laugh and tell him to try being a parent, then I'll take his advice. Recently, due to an emergency, my wife and I needed a babysitter for a whole day, so I called my brother because despite his judgment, he is actually very good with our kids. When we got home in the evening, the kids were in bed, having had dinner, and we thanked him profusely. He very earnestly told us that now he had experience being a parent, he realized that not letting your kids use screens was very easy, and they hadn't watched TV or used their iPad in the 12 hours he'd been there. He also said he'd calmed their fears. They had been aware of the emergency a little bit, read to them, not had to bribe them to do anything with sweets, and he dealt with very calm, relaxed children as opposed to the brats they normally are when they're with me, his words. He gave us a 20-minute lecture about our bad parenting, and now that he was in a position to give advice, he was giving it. We'd been planning on paying him £200 to thank him for doing this for us, short notice, and looking after the kids for so long, but we sent him on his way without any pay. The next day, I called him up to tell him I thought his behavior was incredibly inappropriate, that I appreciate him looking after the kids, but it was better he didn't see them for a while, and that him springing that all on us, especially after a day of stress, showed how immature he really was. I told him that he actually didn't know anything about parenting because he wasn't a parent. I concede I may have gone too far, but my mom called me up later to tell me my brother was crying, and she called me a dickhead because he was just trying to help, and apparently I'm a bad parent for dealing with people's kindness so rudely. My brother and parents are pissed off at me and not talking to me. So, am I the a-hole?
Bibbidi bobbidi, give me the sockety. Is how I feel after this story. So, there's something that he says right at the start that kind of tips me off to who this OP is. I think it, forgive me if I'm wrong, but he says something like, we've had a lot of scorn for how other people have raised their children.
We had lots of scorn for people who parented in ways we disagreed with. But as any parent knows, actually raising kids is hard work and you will break your values.
That whole sentence had me cringe, but the very end of it will have you break your values. No, they won't. Life gets difficult. In practice, sometimes it can be hard to say no, or to give the directions the way you think they should be. And it's easier to shove an iPad in front of a child or to
bribe them with sweets.
That is terrible parenting.
Or lie to them.
Me saying all those things, it's not that hard. Because if those are your values, it just happens naturally. And when your kids have to learn that not everything goes their way, it's good for them. And there's a very stark difference between being abusive and a bad parent versus being a parent teaching values, in my opinion. Because there are 1,000 different ways to raise children. So again, this all outlines the type of person he is. He has a brother who's taking, I guess he said his focus is psychology.
Correct.
Child psychology.
It seems like it, and development.
He's probably one of the only people currently that you may want to actually listen to, just a little bit. Now, I don't think he's graduated yet, so he doesn't have his degrees, and he's not practicing yet. But it's okay to not know everything. And that's, as a parent, that's one of the first things you have to start understanding about yourself is you don't know everything. And when someone does want to offer you a little piece of advice, it's not an attack on who you are as an overall human being. I think that's where a lot of people can get lost.
And if you take it as that, then apparently you've got some guilt there.
None of us come out ready to be a parent. You have to learn along the way, and hopefully you don't make the big mistakes. And if you do, learn and try. That's the point. We all make mistakes. So I guess this is where this comes full circle for me. They know how the brother feels about their parenting. He's been open in expressing how you shouldn't be parenting to them. And that can hurt, and that sucks. When you have some people critiquing you and you can't handle that well, that's a you problem. You seriously need to go seek some help as to why it is you can't hear constructive criticism. We all need it from time to time. But our OP's ego is very big, and because his brother doesn't have children yet, he can't speak on something he's clearly in school for and studying about. And then he put into practice. Now, don't get me wrong, a 12-hour sample size is not enough to say that these habits and the way these kids act is changed and different the way I operate. But
he was able to do it.
He was. But those are things that if you heard your brother for 12 hours, I wasn't experiencing any of these things because I was approaching it this way. As a parent, you should go, hey, babe, maybe we should change up some of the things we're doing so that way we can get the results that we're looking for. That's it. That's all you should have taken that for.
Okay, honey, let's do it.
You know, I can't tell you how many times that we've had to readjust the way we were doing things to make sure that we weren't, and not just parenting, in any aspect of life. There's always going to be a better way to do something.
Just because something worked on me growing up doesn't mean it would work the same on our son.
Wildly. But we can all fall into that rut, especially early on. Now, the only thing I will say as far as the back half of the story, after they get back from an emergency, they never clarify what it is they needed him to watch the kids last minute for. Do they say what the emergency was?
Yes. Apparently, the OP's wife's mother had a stroke and passed away. Now, it sounds like, based on like the comments, that the OP had been staying behind with the kids, and it was the wife that was seeing the mom, and this whole like last minute thing was so that he can actually go
say goodbye
to see his wife and be a support and say goodbye.
And I'm certain that our OP's brother would have known exactly what was going on during this entire thing.
Our OP says, yes, he did. He did know. And just so that you're aware, they're in the UK. So he kind of mentions travel times, and for at least individuals who live in a much larger country such as us, he was saying that the travel time was 12 hours, but there's like a lot to it than that. And other people can go ahead and look in the comments on how it is.
Well, given all of that, I think that completely changes the way I feel about this story. Initially, all this came down to was someone having a big ego and not understanding that when they do get given some type of constructive criticism, that it should be taken as such. I can get behind that and him being a little pompous as far as his reaction and how he treats people and looks at things. But when your younger brother knows, and I don't care what his focus is, and I don't care what he studies, but he knows that you and your wife are coming home from the death of her mother, and what you're greeted with coming through the door is, you're not parenting good enough. I don't care what circumstance you want to paint that in. For your younger brother not to know that there is a time and a place for everything that you will do in life is a drop of the ball. You have every right to have been upset. Now, I will never agree with you cutting him off from his nieces and nephews over this. I think that's a step too far. But I'm going to have to say I think everyone sucks. Would you have acted any differently? If we walked through the door and someone said, by the way you're doing it is wrong, and here, let me explain all of these things. When we're tired from the traveling, when we're down from the emotions of that moment, that's what you get accosted with?
And the wife is technically pregnant, because our OP said at the beginning, with a fourth kid on its way.
I would have said, thank you for your service. Here's your money, because I wouldn't have withheld money. Obviously, I understand if he didn't know about it, but I'm always going to pay people for the work that they do if I'm not doing it. That's just how I feel. But you can get where maybe this tipped off from 1 to 100 very quickly based off knowing that crucial little bit of information. That changes this for me in the fact that he's not the only a-hole. His brother is as well.
You would think to read the room.
He's still got a lot to learn, apparently.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP is the a-hole. And is the a-hole because the extra information that I gave you was actually from the comment section. Now, the consensus is what it is because that's what our OP put inside the post. They didn't put the extra information, such as potentially what could be pushing someone to create such radical decisions. And they do clearly specify that the family does know about this loss. Now we, per the comment section, know about this loss. But it had some Redditors questioning the validity and if OP's just trying to find a win here. I hope that's not the case. That would be a pretty low blow to say because a family member passed away as to being the reason why you would want to win at a Reddit post. I hope somebody doesn't stoop that low, but I would have to side with you on everyone sucks here. However, the consensus on Reddit is our OP is the a-hole because the Redditors question OP and their brother, truly lecturing them based on how just the post itself comes across. The way that OP sounds as if they're on a high horse and that maybe being told, hey, look, you had some problems with the kids. This is what I did differently with the girls to make it easier. They can be a little difficult at times, and to twist that kind of talking because emotions are high, and any kind of feedback, even if it is given to you in a positive way, can be easily twisted by someone who's dealing with a lot of emotions to begin with. I think it's one of the reasons why there's a lot of individuals on Reddit who continued to put it as you're the a-hole. You experienced this bad thing, yes. Did this thing really happen the way that you described? Well, you literally come across as someone who's entitled and judgmental to begin with. You say it in your post. You scorn other parents for the way that they've raised and that you break your own values because of what you want the easy way out. And then your brother is giving you what you think is a lecture. Is it really a lecture or is it just your feelings now?
I can't get behind people only believing that this is a one-side problem.
But then I have to come across and play the devil's advocate here and say, well, is it truly his brother coming across as being a jackass and saying you're doing this wrong, you're a bad parent, and instead just being like, hey, if you do this, this, and this, you'll make things a little easier for yourself?
I think it might have only been that because he says the brother is giddy, that he says that now he's watched him for 12 hours, so obviously now he's a parent and now he can give you his advice. Now, maybe he's putting that through a spectrum of the way he feels and it's not what his brother said, but if I'm basing it off of how he spoke, and this is what his brother relayed to him before he gave him that information, his brother's also on a high horse as well, in my opinion.
Well, I guess we'll never truly know the situation aside from what we've got read. And no matter what, I think there's really no winning on this one. I have to side with you. Everyone sucks here. There is a time and a place. I think our OP went too far. I don't feel bad about the money part because if it wasn't something that was agreed on by both sides and you were just trying to do it as just like a thank you and therefore you want to hold it back, you're not spiting anybody there. That's only something for you to know as a person.
That still shows your values.
But it's not something that he did knowing that that would punish his brother more for it because technically he didn't promise his brother anything to begin with. It's refusing to allow your brother to see his nieces and nephews because you're upset that your brother gave you some advice, gave you some critiques, and gave you critiques based on what you've been flaunting in his face to begin with, which is you've never parented. But apparently now he has.
He was chomping at the bit for that one. But again, that's what makes them both wrong. You should have been able to read the room and know that you could have your point spoken and get your aha, I gotcha after everything's calmed down for them, not the second they walk through the door. And I honestly, I would like to hear everyone's take on that. Does the story change for you when you understand that that's what this couple just went through? Or does it really not matter?
That would be very interesting to hear what our listeners have to say about this one. Well, let me go on to our next story and see what you think about parenting and a Caribbean cruise. Am I the a-hole for abandoning my parents at an island in the Caribbean so I could get back to our cruise on time? I graduated from high school back in December. As a gift, my parents got me a cruise. It was also for my 18th birthday. It was also a family vacation. We usually stay at all-inclusive resorts, but I have always wanted to go on a cruise. I told my parents it was different and that if we went on the excursions, we had to follow the schedule no matter what. Well, it was a week-long cruise and they would not head back to the ship when I said it was time to go. They were busy shopping and bargaining with the locals. I finally said that I was heading back to the ship. My mom waved me off. They missed a departure by a lot. Like 45 minutes. They got a hold of me through WhatsApp. They wanted to know why I didn't get the boat to wait for them. I wanted to scream that they were not going to inconvenience 3,998 people because two could not understand what a schedule was. They ended up having to fly to the next port from there, and it was expensive. They were pissed at me for leaving them behind. I don't know what I was supposed to do. They literally told me that they knew what they were doing. I wish I had never asked for this. They are making me miserable because I left without them. Am I the a-hole?
Boy, your parents are petty. Although we have never been on a cruise yet. Maybe. I have seen plenty of what happens to people when they... What is it? The run of shame on a pier where the cruise ships are taking off and you can see where people are... shouting expletives and booing, and because I do know that they wait for a second if they know someone's not on, but for the most part, you get like a little bit of leeway, and then they take off. You're wasting their time. You are correct. There are thousands of people on these ships, and why should they have to wait for two people not being able to maintain their time? Yes, you are on vacation, but I'm certain that when you leave those boats, they tell you need to be back by a certain time, or the Lido is shipping off. And
then you have a bunch of people on the cruise ship watching people run.
Yeah.
I've seen those videos. That's intense.
But for your parents to take that out on you when they, what it sounds like, vehemently told you, shove off, we got this. Or, you're an adult now. Understand that you're only responsible for your actions. So if your parents fall on their face, that's your parents' fault. I will just tell you this as my only bit of advice. Because you just turned 18, I believe.
Yes.
Tell them to grow up. You are not the a-hole OP.
Redditors have a consensus that our OP's not the a-hole. Redditors pointed out that OP technically saved their parents for dishing out another ticket by getting on that cruise ship.
That's very true. That's an extra person.
It's also not any other person's job to manage someone else's time. If you're bad at time management, that doesn't fall to your 18-year-old. You're just bad at time management and you deserve what comes your way. Our OP should not feel bad about anything. In fact, I'm more surprised that the 18-year-old got back on time.
They're good cookie.
Well, let's go on to our very last story. And I have to say, I've kind of raised it up from some seriousness at the end, right?
Yeah.
So this one, I think, will keep raising it up, I hope. And have you ever heard of a Korean foot peel?
I'm not familiar with that term.
We're going to learn it together.
Uh-oh.
For our last story, today I fucked up by not realizing my Korean foot peel would make my feet peel. I bought myself some home spa day treatments months ago and then forgot about them. The other night, I decided to do the Korean foot peel since sandal season is here. I have never used one of these kinds before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I wrapped my feet up in the little baggies with the treatment liquid and let it sit for almost an hour. Afterwards, my feet felt nice and soft, and I thought that was it. Fast forward to yesterday, when I wore strappy sandals to work for the first time this spring. I didn't notice anything was amiss until a coworker said they liked my sandals, so she and I and the other coworkers nearby looked down at my feet, and I could see big chunks of skin peeling off my feet. Like, it was noticeable. I quickly tucked my feet away and ducked into the bathroom at the first opportunity to observe the horror of my eroding foot flesh. Turns out a Korean foot peel takes effect 5 to 6 days after you do it, in the form of shedding an entire layer of skin. 2 days after this horror, it's still going on. And I hope my coworkers have recovered from the sight of my gnarly peeling feet. I will be wearing full coverage shoes in the meantime. The too long don't read. I did a Korean foot peel not realizing it would make my skin peel off days later and expose my coworkers to the gross side of my peeling feet. Edit. For people wanting to know the brands so they can also experience this, unfortunately, I don't know. I just picked it up on a whim at the drugstore and didn't look at the brand, but I can confirm that where my feet have molted, they are nice and soft.
I mean, it says it in the description of the product, so I mean, you did get what you paid for.
I mean, for me though, right? When you hear about like face masks and you peel it off, like, I don't know. I got so grossed out by this because I've heard of Korean foot peels, but I thought that was just the name of it. Like, it's just like the mask. You put it on, you peel it off your foot, and then your foot gets soft, and that's it.
Milady had a whole bucket of skin come off her feet with coworkers around.
There's apparently a lot of people who have done this, not realizing that this would happen. And the one that I think made me laugh the most was I did the same thing once. I actually thought my sandal had broken until I looked down and realized, nope, that's a flap of your dead foot skin, not your sandal. The horror.
The flap? These people.
These descriptions. One person described this as so disgusting, so satisfying.
Ew. Where's the satisfying from?
I don't know. Maybe it's just the peeling off of the dead stuff.
Ugh.
Ugh,
Your feet are snaky snakes?
Snake a snake. Shedding. Just put little eyes on it.
Little googly eyes. So was that our last story?
That was our last story.
You found us another eyebrow-raising one to end off with.
I have to send us through a myriad of emotions.
That one did it.
Gross.
Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you've seen the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays. And on our Patreon, we put Damas After Dark, where you can experience more of these weird types of stories.
There are plenties. Doth thou even read it?
We would also love to thank all of our Patreons for your support.
Yes, love and appreciate every single one of you.
Mwah!
As always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
They're a doozy today.
You had at least 4 divorced ones.
3 of them.
Very sad. That's how bad it was. My mind's like, there was a lot.
I wanted different perspectives on divorce because it takes a lot to lead someone to get there. But there's a lot of people that stay in marriages, and sometimes it's just really toxic and it hurts both sides.
Again, I will go back to saying it. It always makes you feel thankful for the relationships that you have cultivated in your life. Be thankful for them.
I do, and I am.
And remember, if you post it, please read the labels on the things you buy.
Yeah.
Because I'm certain it said that somewhere.
It
Expect this
literally
thing to
says
peel.
Korean foot peel.